So My Hero Academia Chapter 302 is finally out, and with it comes part 2 of everyone's favourite series, Keeping Up with the Todorokis. In this chapter, we get our deepest dive yet into the history of the Todoroki family. We get a bit more insight into what life was like for the Todoroki children, the internal struggles the family was dealing with, and Toya's deteriorating mental state. But most importantly, we also get to actually witness the event that killed Toya Todoroki all those years ago. But before I begin talking about this chapter, I'm first going to go into a quick summary of what happened last time. In the last chapter, we got a good look into the Todoroki family origins. The chapter opened up with Endeavor and Rei meeting for the first time, where Rei's parents are basically giving Endeavor a sales pitch as to why Rei would be the perfect wife for a top hero like him. Although it is revealed that Rei herself did have a choice in the matter, and she chose to marry Endeavor for the sake of her family, the meaning of which we learn in chapter 302. We then get a flashback to a young Toya giving out to his father about not training him as Endeavor leaves to go to a meeting. As it turns out, Endeavor and Rei actually went off to meet a doctor to discuss Toya's quirk. The doctor tells them that Toya actually has a fusion of both of their quirks. Unfortunately, it's probably one of the worst fusions possible, as while he inherited Endeavor's flames, he didn't gain his tolerance for heat, but instead Rei's tolerance for the cold. This leads Endeavor to realize that Toya is not capable of surpassing All Might, and as he comes to terms with this realization, Toya makes a declaration that he has to be the one to do it. Good luck with that, kid. But hey, at least he can eat ice cream without having to worry about brain freeze. That's just as good as being the #1 hero, right? Right? Endeavor, knowing Toya can't surpass All Might, stops training the boy. But unfortunately, Toya's flame to become the #1 hero is already burning way too bright, and he refuses to give up. So, in an attempt to both achieve his own goal and to deter Toya from going too far, Endeavor convinces Rei to have more children until they find the perfect quirk hybrid. As Natsu and Shoto are born, Toya begins to fall into the darkest pits of despair as he desperately trains to get his father to notice him. Endeavor once again tells Toya to stop trying for his own sake and to move on to something different. Hearing this, Toya finally snaps and he makes a desperate flaming dash attack towards Rei and baby Shoto, screaming, "Look at me, Endeavor." And this is where chapter 302 picks up. This chapter opens up directly after Toya's attack, with Endeavor talking to Rei about his outburst. Now, it's not shown what exactly happened, but one of the arms on Endeavor's shirt has been completely burnt off, suggesting that he more than likely dealt with Toya in a not so family friendly way, to put it nicely. Look, I may have said I love the character, but that doesn't mean he isn't a gigantic scumbag. Trust me, we see just how horrible he is later. Following this, we learn that it is because of this incident that Endeavor refused to let any of Shoto's siblings interact with him. Now, as Endeavor and Rei are talking about Toya, Endeavor says that he can't keep an eye on him 24/7 due to his work. So, he has hired someone to look after him while he's working. Now, this actually could be some massive foreshadowing. We all know that Toya died in a massive fire, which is explained further in this chapter. However, it is still unclear as to 1, how he actually survived, and 2, how he remained hidden for so long. This person minding him could be the key to this whole mystery. We don't know how long this person was hired to mind Toya for, so if they were still on duty during his incident, it would make sense that they would attempt to save him, and in seeing how messed up he is about his family, they could have attempted to hide Toya in order to save his life. Also, considering we don't know who the person is, it could actually be a villain undercover. It would also make sense that someone close to Toya would be the one to save him, considering the accident took place in his father's training ground. And from everything we've seen so far, Toya isn't exactly close to anyone other than his family. But anyway, as Rei and Endeavor are talking, Rei tells Endeavor that all Toya really wants is his father's acknowledgement. Endeavor replies to this saying that he can't show him anything other than the hero world, to which Rei responds, "Hero, some hero you are walking away. The story then shifts to 5 years later, where a 12-year-old Fuyumi and an 8-year-old Natsu convince a 13-year-old Toya to go play with them. We then get to see this scene here, where I can now 100% confirm the anime done fucked up. But as Endeavor drags away a small Todoroki who just wants to play with his siblings, Toya shoots a look of jealousy their direction. Later that night, we see Toya rambling on to a sleeping Natsu about Endeavor and Shoto. Here, Toya admits that his attack on baby Shoto all those years ago was a mistake, and that Shoto hasn't actually done anything wrong. However, he refuses to admit that Endeavor is right. He goes on to give out about the way Endeavor treats his kids and how he acts like they don't even exist. Now, a clearly overtired Natsu who is trying to sleep replies to his brother's rambling saying, "Why can't you rant to Big Sis once in a while?" Hearing this simple comment, Toya breaks down, begging Natsu not to ignore him like everyone else has, and that he can't go to the girls in the household because they just wouldn't understand. Now, there is a good bit to unpack from this conversation. Firstly is Toya's ranting. We see him out of his bed huddled over Natsu, who is clearly trying to sleep, and in the position he is in, it almost seems like he's trying to convince Natsu that everything he is saying is right and that Natsu should be on his side. But there's also the fact that Natsu asks why can't he rant to someone else once in a while, telling us that this isn't the first time Toya has gone off like this and that it's actually a pretty common occurrence. Now, doing this once or twice would be fine, but constantly ranting about his issues with his father really shows us his desperation for Endeavor's attention. The thought of, in his eyes, regaining the life he once had has consumed him and brought forth a deranged obsession with being noticed. This is backed up by the fact that after Natsu gives his brother a light dismissal, Toya breaks down, immediately assuming that his brother will ignore him and doesn't care about him. Now, this is a clear sign that Toya is not okay. He has been severely messed up by his childhood to the point where even a simple comment from his younger brother makes him think the absolute worst and causes him to completely lose his mind. Dear Lord, Endeavor messed this boy up! But after this, it cuts to a shot of Rei confronting Toya, who is about to head on over to Endeavor's training grounds. Rei asks Toya to stop and to go play with his friends, but he responds with, "I don't need any friends, we're in different worlds." Which is a nice little callback to when Todoroki asked to play with his siblings, but Endeavor told him no because he lives in a different world than them. Rei confronts her son and asks him if he really wants to be a hero that badly. She then goes on to give a genuinely heartwarming speech about how there are so many opportunities in the world and that he shouldn't focus on his father, but rather on the person he wants to be. It's a genuine moment that really shows the love Rei has for her children. However, Toya doesn't see it this way, and instead shouts back at his mother about how Endeavor isn't the only one that ignited the flame within him. He then goes on to mention how Rei's family was poor and that she was sold off for her ability with no choice in the matter, and that's the only reason he was born. Now, this is interesting, because even though Rei does love all of her children, Toya technically isn't wrong. Now, Rei later mentions that although she did have limited options, she was the one to make the final call on whether or not to marry Endeavor. But the reason she did have a child was to make the perfect offspring for Endeavor. So you can actually see a tiny bit of the justification behind Toya's actions. He was technically born for a purpose, and since has become a failure of that purpose. But anyway, we then see Toya using his quirk in Endeavor's training grounds, and it's here where he realizes the true power of his ability. As it turns out, the strength of Toya's flames are directly connected to his emotions, meaning the stronger of an emotion he feels, the more powerful his flames become. It's also shown that as his body began to mature during puberty, so did his flames, with them changing from Todoroki red to Dabi blue. There's also a little note here about how anytime Toya gets excited, he begins to cry, which explains why every time Dabi talks about his family, bloody tears begin to roll down his face. It's a nice little touch. After this, Toya heads home and asks Endeavor to come up to his training ground during the holiday break because he has something he wants to show him. Immediately suspicious of his son, Endeavor finds Toya's burn marks from training, but before he has time to scold, Toya quickly interrupts Endeavor, saying something amazing has happened and that although he doesn't think he is strong enough to beat All Might yet, he thinks Shoto has some serious competition. And before he leaves, he shouts at Endeavor with tears in his eyes, saying, "And then you'll realize I wasn't a mistake." And now furious, Endeavor charges into Rei's room and begins to roar at her, "Why didn't you stop him? You were supposed to watch over him." As Endeavor is raging at his wife, 5-year-old Shoto is desperately swinging his arms at Endeavor, telling him to stop bullying his mother. As Fuyumi and Natsu are huddled together in the next room, crying and covering their ears as they listen to Endeavor's rampage. It's honestly a terrifying moment where we finally get to see the demon that was Endeavor up close and personal for the first time. I also want to point out that in this shot, Rei seems to be getting up from the floor. Now, it's not said why she is in this position, but it can be assumed that Endeavor is the reason. Sweet mother of God, this family is messed up. The chapter then cuts between shots of Endeavor talking to Rei in the present and Toya at the training grounds in the past, waiting for his father to show up. Endeavor reveals that he never went to see Toya because he didn't know how to talk to him, and Rei replies, "Neither did she." With this, we see past Toya's rage building and building as he realizes that his father isn't coming. And as his eyes begin to fill with tears, they are quickly replaced by flames. Suddenly, Toya's entire body explodes into a massive inferno, and as he desperately tries to make the flames stop, he quickly comes to the realization that he can't control them. As he calls out for help in the middle of the searing hot flames, it cuts back to a quick shot of present-day Dabi, who notes that it makes sense why he couldn't stop the flames. Endeavor only ever taught him how to turn the heat up, which is a great reference at how Endeavor never taught him how to deal with his emotions. And with this, Toya Todoroki becomes consumed in his own flames, and as Endeavor finally arrives on the scene, his body is nowhere to be found. The story then cuts back to the present, where the Todoroki family members each admit to themselves that they could have done more to help, both with Toya and after his death. Endeavor states that after the incident, he couldn't help but obsess over Shoto because if he stopped, it would have all been for nothing. Rei states that Endeavor gradually got worse and worse after the incident, and she couldn't help but see him in their children and couldn't treat them right. Fuyumi says that she knew that the family was broken, but she never actually tried to bring it up or do something about it. And finally, Natsu, the only one with common sense apparently, still blames Endeavor for it all, but he mentions how if he had knocked some sense into his brother during his rants, maybe he wouldn't have turned into Dabi. Now, I get what they were going for in this scene, that the family falling apart isn't the result of one person, but the action or inaction of all of them. But everybody's actions were all the result of Endeavor. Rei couldn't treat her kids right because of Endeavor's abuse. Fuyumi didn't help with her parents' relationships, but that shouldn't be her responsibility. And Natsu was just an 8-year-old child. How was he supposed to know slightly dismissing his brother's ramblings would have any lasting effects? I mean, he wasn't even mean about it. But yeah, I get the point that it's supposed to be a uniting moment, but it really does not feel deserved. Anyway, Rei goes on to say that even though all of their hearts are shattered, that they still have to stand up and fight, and that Endeavor has to fight Dabi. Endeavor, shocked to hear his wife say this, asks how can she be so strong, to which she replies that there is one person who has been through more pain than all of them, and that they are the only one that has the full right to resent the family. Yet, this person still fights and has helped in connecting each and every one of them back together. That person being Shoto. And finally, the chapter ends with Best Jeanist and Hawks listening from outside the room as Shoto puts his hand out to Endeavor and tells him that once he's done crying, he can get up and they can go stop Toya together. And thus, the chapter comes to a close. Now, I'm not gonna lie, that moment where Rei praises Shoto for everything he has done, accompanied by his innocent face, gave me butterflies, and I've no idea why. Maybe it's because it's amazing to see just how much our little half and half bastard has grown up. But that scene with the family confessions is complete and utter But let me know what you think of this chapter. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like and comment what you think is going to happen next. For more My Hero content, subscribe to the Lunchtime Crew. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Plus Ultra!